My plan is to introduce myself a little bit further and then to share some content with you and then put that content to work a little bit with you and then to debrief and see what we make of that, if we have any observations, questions, or comments on what we've covered. I call myself an OD competent professional CEO, where OD stands for organization development. And I've been basically running companies my whole career, and it's actually now closer to 40 years. I graduated from MIT Sloan School of Business back in '77. I had a concentration in computers and strategy and organization development, and I got to work with some of the founders of the field, fortunate for me, and mostly by luck. Before that, I have an undergraduate degree, a triple major in computer science, economics, and math from the University of Massachusetts. Right out of the Sloan School, I came out here to be part of a small company group of 12 people in Foster City, California. We were part of an organization, a startup that was based in Washington, D.C. And 20 years later, we had gone from that small handful of people to 10,000 people in $1 billion company. And in the course of that 20 years, you learned a lot. And I got a chance to put all that OD stuff to work. And after that, I have gone on to run and work with many companies, investors, venture capital, private equity, private companies, and all kinds of different situations, including some nonprofits, governments, churches, and schools as well. But that's why I say professional CEO, because I run one after another. It sounds better than serial CEO, as opposed to a serial killer. The main thing that I do, I don't lead with OD. I hardly ever start with OD because people say, what is all that OD stuff? And even though it works, and in fact it works so well that I think 50 years from now, all successful companies will be led by OD competent CEOs. But that's more of a vision and a future. Right now, what you need to sell and lead with is the fact that it works. And I do that by getting people to grow as individuals, to grow as teams, to grow as organizations, mostly by working better together. And I want to give you a little bit of an example of that today with a little bit of content. Then we'll put that content to work, and then we'll have a little mini case. Now, the way all along, I told you I've run companies my whole career, but the other thing I've done is maintain an affiliation with universities throughout most of my career. Most people at work call me the professor because they think of me in the way I lead as one of coaching and teaching, and as you'll see, that kind of works for me. But I also like to have a foot in academia. And what I have come to think of it is that at work, we experiment with things and we figure out what works. In academia and in the classroom, we get to figure out why it works. And so I think that's kind of the interesting connection and linkage between in the field, in the classroom. And for me, keeping that constant connection and that inquisitiveness about what works, why it works, has sort of sustained me in my career. And I enjoy sharing that enthusiasm for learning and discovery with those that I work with, both at work and in the classroom. So in a way, I think of my clients, the people I work with in business, as students as well. They just don't leave me at the end of the semester. And some of my students end up in some of those businesses, by the way, so it kind of works out all around. But I like to think that the students that I work with, I end up staying in touch with pretty much their whole careers. And I, by the way, have taught at several universities, and guest lectured at several universities over the course of now 40 years out of school. So what is, let me tell you first how I think of what OD is. OD is the intentional and sustained effort to take a system of two or more people who are working together now in one way, and then you envision a future in which they're working together in a different way. The OD intervention is a systematic and sustained effort to move from here to there at a specific point in time in the future. So let's take a little bit of content and see how you put that to work. So basically the founder of management science is Peter Drucker. Maybe many of you have heard of him. And one of the axiomatic truths that Peter Drucker shared with us is that The purpose of a business is to solve a problem for a customer. Let that sink in. And it should beg for you a question for any organization. If that's true, if the purpose of a business is to solve a problem for a customer, then every organization ought to wonder, whose problem do we solve? Which gets us to three questions. The who are we serving, what problem do they have, and what solution are we bringing to the picture? Right? And if the top executives in an organization have even slightly different answers to those questions, what can happen? You can get confusion, you can get disconnected, you can feel, which one are we doing, this or that? Right? And one way to look at it is, you see, you have this kind of a picture, where there may all be leaders moving in different directions. You have a little bit of tension that's created from that. So that's probably not ideal. What you'd rather have is for every leader taking their great strengths and using it to accomplish the same thing as everybody else. So that your picture would look more like this. Where you have all three of your top executives, or however many you have, all taking their great strengths and shooting them up in the exact same direction. How many arrows do you see in this picture that are moving up and to the right? 3? Does anybody see a fourth super arrow?
Oh, no.
Where is it? It's right here, right? The 3 arrows form an arrow. This is what I go for. This is what we want to go for. Where everybody's trying to do the same thing. How do we get this, though? That's an interesting question. This is easy to say. It's a pretty picture. It's easy to remember that. You get what's going on here. And the hard part, though, is how do you get it? So that I can think of three ways people try to get this. One, probably the most common, is just assume it. Everybody just assumes that what they're thinking is what everybody else is thinking, right? How often does that work? Not too often. What would your picture of a dynamic, solid, super leader, you might think that leader would assert it. So you could assume it or you could assert it and say, this is the way it is. We're going to do it this way. And whatever the big guy says, that's what we're all going to do. And here you are. What's the problem with that, though? We might not have buy-in. We might not have a sense of investment in it. I didn't help create it, so I don't own it. I'm sort of just in a one-down kind of mode to it. So it's a little bit disempowering. And if the leader really wanted everybody to have that same commitment to the same goals and solve the same problem as that leader's trying to solve, they might want to do a third thing, which would be to facilitate it. Which means to work with the people to get everyone at the top of the organization all the way on down to be trying to do the exact same thing that the leader's trying to do. Now the question is, how do you do that without commanding it? How do we facilitate it? Well, let's take a hypothetical case. Let's take a university that happens to be in the business of adult education. Not necessarily this one. Probably not this one. But you can imagine one. And let's say we survey the people who work here. So we survey the administration, we survey the faculty. And we ask them a question. We say, what's on your mind? Like, what's the thing you really want to know more about at the place where you work, at this university? Well, I've done that exact survey dozens of times in organizations I've stepped into to run or that I help, and even the one that I grew from that early stage. At some point along the way, it became obvious I needed to ask that question of the employees, starting with the leadership team. Now, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, the number one answer in almost every case is the same. The question people have on their minds is, who are we and what do we do? So let's suppose that you are the top team at that university in our case. So let's say this group here is the president, this group here is the director of students, and in the back we have the admissions group. for the marketing group. So each of you has some opinion about who we are and what we do. Do you think that our opinions match this? Do you think they match this? Well, we have three choices at this point. Let's suppose we get together in a room like this, and we have the top three leaders of the organization right here. And we say, what do we do about this? We just surveyed the whole staff, or the top of the top staff, if you want to limit it to just the top, and this is the question they have. They want to know more about who we are and what we do. It confuses us that they have that question. So what are our choices, guys? What do you want to do? Well, we have three choices. We can ignore it or just assume it'll go away and be okay, and everybody will figure it out eventually, and the clarity that we each have is enough to carry the day. The second thing we could do is we could say, well, how about one of us takes our way of saying it and puts it out there as the way, and just communicate it far and wide. That might work. That might show dynamic leadership, and it might carry people forward and solve the problem. But what's a third thing we could do? How about if we start with the people in the room, right here, and we ask each of us anonymously to submit our statement of who we are and what we do. And then let's just see how that looks. Are we in fact aligned? So we do that, and what do you think comes out? Most likely something a little bit more like this. And for example, one of us might say, we're here to develop skills so people perform better at work. And somebody might say, well, it's more about completing your degree. And somebody else might say, it's more about life. It's about being a better person and fulfilling your life ambitions. And so the three of us are in the room together trying to sort this out. And we say, oh, now I'm beginning to see where the confusion might come from. Because even we're not 100% aligned. And even those little tiny distinctions might drive some people crazy and cause a little bit of tension and confusion on the front line. So how about we work together and see if we can come up with another way of saying it. And that, in order if we did that, and we come up with this one. How about if we say our combined goal and our overarching goal is to help students achieve their potential to perform and grow professionally and personally. Now, that's nice. Maybe you think it's better than the other three, and I don't really care, but what I do care about is that in this story, we work together to come up with that, which makes it powerful. And it may not be a good way to do it, may not be it's always a better way, it might not even be the best way, but it is the same way if we all say and think and agree on the same framing. And from there, we can work on making it good, better, best, and it will be better off even still. But just by talking to each other, and getting it clear between us, and having a sense of vested ownership and commitment to it, we will feel much more strongly about what we're doing. We'll grow together. Individually, we'll grow as individuals because we'll expand from the experience. We'll grow together as a team, and we'll grow together as leaders of an organization that is finding its way into the future. So you can see how a clever leader who knew what they wanted the answer to be could facilitate a process and might even be open to coming up with a slightly different answer by working with their team and come up with that alignment along the way, and they're much better off for it. Make sense? Now, let's see. Are we aligned? The three different groups we referred to. The president, dean of students, marketing. How do you feel? Are we aligned? So it works? Now, what do you do this on? What topic would you do this kind of an approach on? I would say on anything that's important. It's not just on that question. It's on any question. So my sense is I don't want people to do things because I tell them to. I want them to do it because they understand what they're doing, they think it's the right and best thing to do, and they want to do it. I never want to be telling people what to do. So I would like to create an atmosphere of understanding and commitment, involvement, in what we're doing so that everybody is working full board trying to make the whole thing happen. And in the class I teach, for example, here, there are what I call 7 truths that help you change the world by systematically and programmatically doing things like this to be able to make any organization go from where it is today to where you want it in the future. But let me ask you a question. We said this is what works, and we know it because it does, and we've seen it. We're in the classroom, so let's ask, why does it work? Why do you think this works? Anybody?
Everybody has buy-in.
Why, right, we have buy-in, and how come? Well, how come they have buy-in?
Collaborated and worked together.
They got heard.
They got to say.
They got heard, they got a chance. They could see their effort, in it. They could see it in it, right? Their seagulls are in the picture, right? So let's throw it open. Let's ask, what comments do you have about the topic, the point, the application of the thinking? Does it seem it would work? Have you seen that happen already? Is that sort of old news? What do you think? You waving? Well, what do you think of what you just heard?
Yeah, I think it could work, and I agree with the buy-in piece of collaborating and getting everyone working to the same common goal, but not having that goal being told, but
Having
crowdsourcing.
Crowdsourcing, exactly. Right. It's like a form of crowdsourcing. Well, how could it go wrong? Could it go wrong?
Put a lot of work into it and nothing changes.
How could that happen?
It doesn't trickle down to everybody.
Yeah, so there's got to be.
It gets skewed.
It's fine in the room when we go out, and then nobody does anything
The
about it.
leadership team, but if they're not communicating it down,
Right. So how would you keep that from happening?
you have to stay all informed and all on the same page.
Well,
and
me-
also building the same model.
Exactly. Right. Cascade on down. So you do the same thing. Each one of the 3 leaders we just mentioned might go back to their departments and do the same thing, and then bubble it back up. Kind of have a constant iterative dialogue about it and get everybody involved. And I do agree. Follow up afterwards and making sure that we really bring it alive. I think another way it can go wrong is if it feels manipulative. If you're too clever, and if people will be able to see the leader knew all along what they wanted the answer to be and sort of made it come out that way, that's where it can also fall down. But I just want to pause and say that's a good example of some content that is delivered, right? The purpose of a business is to solve a problem with customers, for example. The importance of alignment. No leader does much alone. Trick is to decide what kind of leader to be and collect followers and architect the leadership model you have in mind to basically build the business that solves the problem for your customers. And it's true for any organization, not just a commercial business. This is an organization that also has a common purpose. And in the classroom, what we do is ask you to take the work that you're doing wherever you're employed and apply this right away. So you can go out and do it on your own, but also often as part of class, there'll be a homework assignment or a course paper project where you do this and many other things that you learn on the business that you're working on and bring that back in. Any other observations or comments or questions for me? Did you get your money's worth? You okay? No more of that. If not, then I will turn it over to the Dean of Student Affairs, Kayla Krupnik-Walsh.